Good evening, everybody. We'll go ahead and get this meeting started. If everybody could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, so there is a special agenda with one consent calendar item, so if we can add that to the regular agenda to have it be considered as item 5.24. And then there's two items that are currently on the consent calendar, 5.9 and 5.10, that we need to move to discussion.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the agenda with the changes, the three changes?
Councilman Hedgecock?
Aye.
Councilman Schindler?
Aye.
Councilman Vosberg?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez? Mayor Horn?
And I vote aye. Okay, next item is awards, presentations, appointments, or proclamations. We have one item tonight, presentation of natural gas market and future outlook and rates.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. It's good to be back in Coalinga again. I'm here to talk about natural gas this evening. And I just want to cover a little bit of background first before I go into the gas purchase policy and what the next winter looks like, this coming winter. First of all, after over 20 years, the city has a new gas supplier. For the past 20 years, it had been Shell Trading. They did an outstanding job. I worked with them extensively over many years. And it wasn't until the last few years that I realized how well they were treating Coalinga. Very reasonable. They're a huge gas supplier, and Coalinga is a small customer for them. But they did a great job. But they had announced earlier in the year they were going to leave the retail market, which caused me working with staff to do an RFQ search for a new supplier. And that, of course, you approved at a previous meeting. That new supplier is NRG, or their formal name is NRG Business Marketing. They're another large company like Shell. We're just at the end of the first month of their gas service to the city. They started July 1st. It's been a very smooth transition, and they have a very capable team. There are many different people I've talked to them there with questions already, especially as we look toward buying gas for this winter. Which goes to the gas purchase policy. You approved the gas purchase policy a year ago in May by resolution. Having a gas purchase policy formalized by the City Council was my recommendation to staff and to you. And the reason, just to review, that this was so important, especially last May, is it was coming out of the very cold 22-23 winter where gas prices just skyrocketed. Fortunately for the city, we had bought fixed price gas ahead of the winter. So the city did not suffer gas prices as high as $50 a unit. But what I realized, since I'm not going to be around forever, but not going anywhere anytime soon, is that it's important for you to have a formal document about purchasing gas that lays it out. And sure, we created more work for ourselves by having you approve it and by being accountable to you for what it says. So I need to bring that up and just review a couple of things about it, because one of the things it says is that since it's a resolution, in order to change it, we need City Council approval. You're not doing that tonight, but I just want to introduce the suggested changes that I have for this year. First of all, it says that prior to November of each year, we will buy 100% of the 3-year average of winter supply. So what I'm proposing, that will come back to you, is an amended gas purchase policy that says 80% of the 3-year average for each winter supply. And the reason is because when there are months, as there were this past winter, where the fixed price gas that was purchased was less than you needed, we ended up selling gas back at a loss, which if the prices had gone the other way, you could have sold the gas back and made money. But that's not what we're about. We're about price security, not trying to make money by doing stuff on top of just buying gas. So the recommendation is to go to 80%. So what that means is in an average winter, as we're moving through those winter months, November through March, in a perfect situation, 80% of the gas would be at that fixed price. That's the security for 80% of your supply. The other 20% would be at the market price for that month. So to give you an example, and this is going into this winter now, January gas is $7.25. It's still expensive. $7.25 is expensive. Last year in January, we had bought similar gas, but the market in January was at $4. So if we hadn't hedged, we would have saved a bunch of money. But we can't take that risk, because the risk would be, in the previous January, gas was at $49. That would have been horrible. There are utilities. I mean, utilities don't go bankrupt because that doesn't happen, but went way in the red because they hadn't bought fixed price gas or hedged. So as we go to this winter, we're still seeing a situation where fixed price gas is at a premium, $7.25 versus maybe $4. And so at 80%, it provides the opportunity where if the market falls going through the winter, there will be lower cost monthly gas to buy each month as we go through the winter. The risk is that there might be a really cold month. I will be watching as we move into the winter. If that looks likely, we'll go ahead and buy 20% more so that there's not risk. So we're going to come back to you with that one, going from 100% of the 3-year average to 80%. The other change that the gas purchase policy needs is that under the new agreement, there's this table, which I'm sure you haven't looked at for a very long time, which lays out how gas is bought. In the original gas purchase policy, the table divides purchases between 2 purchase points. Under the new contract, it's 1 purchase point. That's more of an administrative thing, but we'll change that as well. And that will come back in 2 weeks when you meet again. So now to talk about the coming winter. This past winter performed about as I had modeled for the city. Gas purchases were down 7%. So this past winter was 7% below the 3-year average because we bought gas for the 3-year average, but that's pretty close. So that meant revenue was also down about 7%. For this winter, what it's looking like right now is that gas rates will need to go back up a little bit, 10, maybe 20%. I haven't finalized that number today. Most of the time today was focused on working on billing improvements with customers. So 10 to 20% potentially upward. That will be finalized. That doesn't have to be finalized in 2 weeks. What the gas purchase policy says is that we need to report to you by the end of August, so we're fulfilling that. But the gas needs to be purchased by November 1st, according to the policy, so you are protected for the winter. The one other issue with the gas system, compared especially to the water system, the gas system doesn't cost very much money. It doesn't have a treatment plant like the water system has a treatment plant. It doesn't have storage tanks. But it does need some attention. It has anode beds that protect the steel pipelines from corroding. One of the 13 anode beds needs to be replaced. It's going to cost up to $100,000. So we need to protect the natural gas fund balance to pay finally for some stuff that needs to be fixed like that in the next fiscal year. So that's another reason that puts a little bit of upward rate pressure. The idea was to maintain the gas fund balance at about $1 million. It's under $1 million now. It's at $600,000 or $700,000. So we don't really want to push that much lower. That's what I have for you tonight. Mainly just proposed amended gas purchase policy will come back in 2 weeks. The resolution gives the city manager authority to go ahead and buy the gas, according to the policy. I need to talk to staff about timing for that. We could do it any time. It doesn't look like there's an opportunity between now and November 1st for gas prices to fall very much. So it's probably going to be better just to get it done, to go ahead and buy the winter gas. And I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Council have questions?
Yeah, I have some questions. So, you're talking about that we might need to raise, that gas prices may need to go up, you said back up by 10 to 20%. Did gas prices ever fall?
Well, a year ago when we went through this exercise, we lowered the gas rates that are charged to customers 20%. I don't know if that's the question you were asking me.
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Well, the reason I ask is because just like with water, anytime you raise prices, people are going to stop using it. So we see a 7% decrease, and that is exactly what I said would happen. If we raise prices, less people will use it, and then now that equals in raising the prices for those that do use it. And this is a constant back and forth, and it will continue to be like that. If we continue to raise prices, people that can't afford it or don't want to afford it will stop using it. So then that will continue the price hike for the rest of those who do feel like they need to use it. So what I'm wondering is, how do we get out of this circle? Because it seems like that's what it is. It's a circle. In the inode beds, I do remember bringing this up a couple months ago too about that, and stating that we probably need to. And I asked about that, and at the time we were told that everything was fine with the inode beds and that they really didn't need attention.
So the just to answer the first question regarding the rate, the 7% is actually, if we really look at trends in terms of usage, the rates went down 20%, but yet 7% less usage on natural gas, and a lot of that's triggered by weather. And so it was abnormally warm. It was a warmer winter last winter. We look at the previous winter when it was extremely cold. I can't remember what the percentage we used above the 3-year average just 2 years ago. So a lot of it's based on weather, and when you see that drop, that 7% really had to do with the weather, being warmer. So people aren't, because really your heating is your primary use, the primary use of that gas. And that's why you see heavy spikes in natural gas usage in the winter, and in the summer it's pretty level, which is kind of like your base load for people using, stoves or whatever else they're using, furnaces. But with the, and then I mentioned with the anode beds have been functioning. We have them inspected annually, and so we haven't had a need to replace them at this point. They've recently started to fail on the last inspection we had, and so we've been requesting quotes to get quotes to see what the costs are going to be to replace those. But we've also been waiting on our grant application, because one of the things that we're looking at is replacing a lot of the steel lines in town. We applied for that large grant through the federal government to replace its multiple miles of steel line, and so if we don't have the steel line, we don't have the corrosion issues on those lines, which you don't need the anode beds. And so we're hoping that we can resolve some issues with the anode beds just by replacing those steel lines. And so we're focusing on certain areas. So when we went after our grant application, there's certain areas of town where we're starting to see the anode beds, all of them are working except for one right now. And so that's obviously one focus area. So if we do receive the grant, we'll replace the steel lines that are connected to that area, and we won't need to replace the rectifier and anode beds. So we're trying to balance that, but also wanting to make sure we don't have impact on the system as well.
So I guess I should clarify. So I wasn't meaning the exact time of now with the 10 to 20%. What I was meaning is that people have been sticker shocked from paying highway robbery prices on gas, natural gas. And everybody I've talked to has said that, hey, that's just insane. Even though we've got a whole presentation from Dan showing that, hey, if we weren't in Coalinga, how much our prices would be. And so we're getting a great deal here. But what I hear from the public is not that sentiment. The public says, hey, gas is extremely expensive, water's extremely expensive, so we're not going to use either one of them. We'll let our grass die because we don't want to use it, because we don't want to pay the city. and we're going to stop using our gas too, and we'll just use other means, even some of them using electricity, which is just insane to me as also, because that's just really, but my thing is that I just see that, like, and I'm not saying that we're doing a bad job, because I think we're doing a decent job at handling this, but it just seems like that rates are going to continue. Am I correct that rates are going to continue to fluctuate? They're going to continue to go up and down. Like, so when you're saying that they went down 10 to 20%, that's after it was a huge increase. So, like, I like to look at it like a 3-year model. Like, how much did we actually, because if let's just look at the presidents, right? It went from $2 to $6 and then back down to $4. Well, people are still like, hey, we actually went up $2. We're used to the lower rates. And so I guess what I'm asking is it ever going to go down to a price to where people are going to think
It's so market driven. It's not a similar commodity as water is, because we have a long-term contract for water. We know what our water costs are going to go. If they go up slightly. Natural gas, as Dan mentioned, how much you can see the fluctuation in cost of gas, where one year it's $4 in January and the previous year it's $49. That's a difference of like almost millions of dollars impact. And
So how long can we keep that gas when we buy it? So you said we bought it pretty cheap, but then we sold it back at a loss. So am I correct in thinking that? And how much did we lose?
Well, we sold back the excess that the city didn't need at a loss. How much did it cost?
What I mean is, okay, so yeah, that's one part of it. And then, so like, you said the excess the city didn't need, but if we're buying in advance and we got it at a cheaper price, then why wouldn't we just hold on to it? Why did we sell it back in the first place?
Well, natural gas is like electricity. You can't store it.
Oh, you can't store it.
No.
Oh, okay. All right. So that makes sense. And then just the second question is, how much did we actually lose on that?
Between $90,000 and $100,000.
And that's a lot of the reason why we're trying to amend the policy is really we're trying to find the happy medium. And I over the years, we've tried our best. Dan, daily, I think when he talks about this new relationship with NRG is that he's not having to look daily now. And so it's allowing us to look at the future. The policy allows us to be able to really kind of analyze it. And I think going to 80% is indicative of what we kind of saw this previous year. But for years we kept lowering rates. And I think when we had to reset rates, it was painful because of how bad the market shifted on us, knowing that we were making good progress, but then the market shifted so much, it went from like that $4 to $49.
Uh-huh.
And we were in the negative trying to bring that reserve down. And so it was a little bit painful when people were used to lower rates and we had to reset on those higher rates and then lower. But I think as we continue to analyze it, it's so market driven that it's hard to say what's going to happen 2 years from now. And we're a very volatile market too. And what happens in the Midwest and other areas that impact those prices.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate all the work that Dan is doing, and I've heard nothing but great things from other cities that say how lucky we are to have Dan, from lots of different places that say, that, and so just because it's volatile and just because our customers don't like it doesn't mean that we're not getting a great deal, and I appreciate that.
Councilman, I'd like to clarify the issue of the gas being sold back, because for your benefit, council benefit, and the public's benefit, to answer the question, why did that happen?
Yeah.
And the reason that happened is coming out of that extremely cold winter, I came to you on behalf of staff with a gas purchase policy that was very cautious. And that purchase policy said that we were going to buy the 3-year average for the winter months. Well, that 3-year average included the cold winter. But statistically, it was there.
Yeah.
So that caused us to have too much gas as we went into a more mild winter. That was the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened was the gas market collapsed under the fixed prices that we had bought. So now we have too much gas that's above the current market during the winter. It is a result of the mechanism of how the market works. But the point I want to make is we were in that situation on purpose to be careful So you could view it as an insurance premium. In other situations, you could have a 3-year average and go to a cold winter, the market goes up, and you end up making money. But that's not what we're trying to do. And so that's why I'm going to the 80%, saying, maybe another mild winter is more likely than a very cold winter like that one. The market is set up right now to collapse again. Let's not do that again. Let's take our purchase to 80%. Will be better and not expose ourselves to that again. I might be back here a year from now and saying, we need to go back. But so we can adjust, and you get to be a part of it because you have a gas purchase policy that involves you all in the discussion. And it should, because it's important to ratepayers, it's important to the city, it's important decisions that are being made.
Well, I appreciate your caution, and I appreciate your conservative pricing in order to make sure that if we, it's a tough game in between. We don't. The number one thing we don't want to do is get lost, and all of a sudden now we're paying up here, and so there is somewhat of a risk in that. And I just want to say I appreciate that.
I got a question for you. How much do the other suppliers drop when prices go up and down? Like the big gas companies, do their cities have the luxury of dropping down in rates like our citizens do?
That's a really interesting question. The way the big investor-owned utilities work, the way the gas systems work, is they adjust the commodity portion of the gas price monthly. So if you're a PG&E gas customer, like I am at home in the Bay Area, I can see the commodity portion of my cost on the bottom of my bill. So it changes every month. Here in Coalinga, we're buying all the gas ahead of time and basically securing the fixed rates that you put in place for your customers so they don't change every month. They only change based on the volume that customers use.
But the big suppliers have a higher margin of profit on their sales, right?
It's not profit because we're all buying the same gas. It's a commodity in the marketplace, natural gas, which is helpful buying it these days because even when we were going through the RFQ process, the prices that we were seeing from the suppliers, they were about the same. It's like, good, okay, it's good to see that because it's a commodity. The reason Coalinga's gas rates can be so much lower than the big utilities is you don't have all the overhead, you don't have all the public responsibilities, if you will, and don't have issues with forest fires that you're paying for and lawsuits and all that stuff that we're paying for on the electric side, even here in Coalinga. You're small and efficient.
So basically, our community has the luxury of having its own supplier, us supplying gas to ourselves.
And operating your own utility. That's the main thing.
So it is a good thing for the community, and we do see it in the long run.
Absolutely. But it's not because of the commodity, it's because of how efficiently you operate your system.
Right, and you're part of that. Thank you.
So I got a quick question. So you mentioned raising the rates again. Is that to cover the replacement and repair on the anode field?
Well, the anode field's only $100,000, which I know isn't only, it's still $100,000.
But you're wanting us to raise the rates again. Is that supposed to cover that?
Yeah,
Or
well, it's
until we
protecting
get
the
the
fund
grants?
balance, which that would come out of as a capital improvement. But it's also assuring that there's enough revenue to maintain the fund balance. So we don't go backwards. We don't want to go backwards.
Any more questions, council? I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, citizens' comments. This section of the agenda allows members of the public to address the city council on any item within the jurisdiction of the council. Members of the public, when recognized by the mayor, should come forward to the lectern, identify themselves, and use the microphone. Comments are normally limited to 3 minutes in accordance with state open meeting laws. No action will be taken by the city council this evening, and all items will be referred to staff for a follow-up and a report. Citizens' comments submitted in writing to the city clerk by 5 p.m. on the day of the city council meeting shall be distributed to the city council and included in record. However, they will not be read. We have anybody that would like to speak?
Good evening, Mayor Horn, Council, and staff. I'm Kyle Savage, Congressman John Duarte's field representative from Redan, Fresno County. First and foremost, just wanted to introduce and say that our office is proud to announce that on August 28th, Wednesday at 6 p.m., we're going to be having our Coalinga Town Hall. It's going to be a community event for the community to come out and talk to the congressman about any issues going on with Coalinga, what he can do better, what he has been doing, and just an important opportunity to come and talk to him. It's not a political campaign event, nothing to do with his campaign, completely 100% just a community outreach environment to be able to talk to the congressman yourself. Going forward, our office is also proud to announce that recently Congressman Duarte wrote the EV Fair Trade Act, which is H.R. 8495, to ensure electric vehicle manufacturers do not use child, forced, or slave labor in the sourcing, materials, or manufacturing of electric vehicles, including batteries. The congressman issued in a statement saying, "We need to end child and slave labor. This bill ensures that Valley families never subsidize these awful practices. The minerals used for electric vehicles must be mined freely and fairly." I am proud to introduce this legislation alongside Representative Van Orden and Representative Owens to combat child and slave labor practices and ensure that hard-earned dollars are not used to subsidize these atrocities. Some background and ways that this act will ensure that EV manufacturers do not conduct child and slave labor is the U.S. Bureau of International Labor Affairs found cobalt, a key component of electric vehicles, is often mined and exploited in children in dangerous conditions. 70% of the world's cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where labor conditions are dire. Mines are described as having subhuman and hazardous conditions, and an estimated 40,000 of 255,000 cobalt miners in the Congo are children, some as young as the age of 6. President Biden has prioritized increasing EVs in the United States, including through tax incentives and regulations to phase out gas and diesel-powered vehicles. The EV fair trade would ensure that American taxpayer dollars are not being used to subsidize EV manufacturers that are using child, forced, or slave labor in the development or development of production of EVs. Specifically, this bill would include mandate EVs manufacturers to certify that the U.S. Bureau of International Labor Affairs, that their components are free from child, enslaved, or slave labor, stop federal funds and tax incentives going to manufacturers without valid certifications, establish a public database to track EV companies' compliance with certifications, require the Secretary of Labor conduct random audits of companies' certifications to ensure compliance, and require the Secretary of Labor to report to Congress on certification status and audits. Thank you guys very much for your time.
Sorry, can you confirm the location of the town hall?
Yes. Oh, sorry about that. It's going to be at the Coalinga Huron Parks and Rec District at the Keck Center. Thank you. Yes, it's going to be Wednesday, August 28th at 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Chuck?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chuck Aiden. I'm a citizen here at Coalinga for a long time. Just wanted to come up here under my own free will with my wife. She wanted me to announce National Night Out at the Center. Come down to the center. It's a free craft night, so you could personalize your school supplies, your one-of-a-kind, stand out, be your own special you. So whatever you get from National Night Out, bring it down to the center, and for free, you can customize it, put your name, bling it out, whatever. You're more than welcome to come out. Also, Saturday and Sunday, August 3rd and 4th, they're having a rummage sale at the center. It's gonna be all sorts of stuff, because believe me, I'm going through it now, getting it all fixed up, ready to go. So that'll be the 2 days. Saturday is 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. Sunday is 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Then also family yoga and fun fitness. Your bonding time with your kiddos, family fun, family yoga, 6 p.m. Every Wednesday down at 486 North 5th Street. So that's that part. Now for my part, I just want to give kudos to Public Works. There's a huge tree branch out in front of Gimme Love last Thursday night. They came out, they chopped it up, they got rid of it in a timely manner. So I just want to give kudos to Plant Ops, Eric and his crew, that they do a great job keeping the city clean and getting messes cleaned up in a timely manner. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? We have any comment cards? No? Council? No? Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Public hearings, we have none tonight. Now as for our consent calendar, we have 24 items on this, and 2 of them have actually been moved to item 6.2 and 6.3. What would council like to do?
Can we pull 5.5 just for a little bit more information on what the numbers mean?
Any more, council? And I'll pull 5.20. Okay, we'll start out with Lonnie, item 5.5, Councilman Hitchcock.
I'd just like the city manager to let us know what the numbers from the transient tax that she has in there, how they're referenced, and why some of them look so short.
Yes, so, Robert, can you pull it up, the attachment on 5.5? So this sheet here represents the transient occupancy tax, which is also known as the hotel tax that the city receives from the businesses that are listed here. And so it shows you per quarter. There are some that, like the Coalinga Motel, for example, in Q1, well, on there it's Q3, so July through September, they didn't pay, but then probably caught up in the next 2 quarters. Some of them are fairly low, so like the Cambridge Inn, we need to look into and see why their transient occupancy tax is so low, as well as probably the Royal Lodge and the Travel Inn, so that's something that we will be looking into.
Thank you. I know the Cambridge looks like it has a lot of people there right now, so
Correct.
makes me wonder.
Okay, now we'll move on to item 520. It says direct staff to seek grants for quick charge electric vehicle stations. So the reason I put this item in is because we actually have the highway running through our town, and we don't have any quick chargers for some of the people that are actually coming through town. So the reason I'm wanting them to look into it is to see about possibly having it, so we have someone. It would actually help a business or two as well while they're waiting for their vehicles to charge. But other than that, we don't have any quick charging here in Coalinga. Yeah, go ahead.
So I concur with the mayor, and I have absolutely heard from a lot of different people that Coalinga is lacking in charging, and that a lot of people would come here, even over Harris, just to charge their vehicles, and that could inspire some kind of economic growth. So I think I'm on board with what you're saying. I think that's a good idea.
If I can add, I think it's beneficial because we have charging stations like here at City Hall in the public parking lot. They're not quick charging stations though. So they're beneficial for people who work downtown and have the ability to charge for several hours to commute to work. But the quick charging stations are ideal for people who are passing through. You know, they may come by and stop and eat lunch or shop once our shopping center's done. And so having those would be beneficial.
They would be, but when we can't get new subdivisions in town because we can't get electricity, I'd rather have more people and less chargers, in my opinion. We need to, PG&E right now has got us cut off pretty much on any new growth until 2028, 2025, 6, 7, 8, whenever they do their upgrades. So, you know, we need to focus on our new businesses and new homes in Coalinga before new chargers for people that don't live here. It's my opinion.
So this item, if approved, directs us to look for grants. So if we find some, they would be brought back to you and say, we found this grant that we can apply for. Do you want us to apply for it? And at that time, if you think it's a good idea, you can authorize us to do the grant. And if not, we wouldn't. But if you approve it tonight, it would direct staff to look for the grants.
Yeah, that's pretty much all it's doing. It's just giving us somewhat of a direction on if we can even do it or not.
Yeah, I don't mind looking into it, but we need to put the community first, not travelers. I mean, we gotta have the businesses here. We need new people moving here, which means we need new subdivisions, so we need the power for those places first.
So I have a question. Is PG&E prioritizing, because I agree with what you said. I agree with what you said and I agree with what you said. You guys are both on board. You know, but is PG&E prioritizing electric vehicle charging stations before they're prioritizing? Because, I mean, I see that they have a lot of charging out there at Harris. They have a lot of charging on the freeway and whatnot. And I mean, I don't know a lot about this, but it just seems like they're prioritizing that over our subdivisions, like you're stating, and that's not. That's
One
not
of
productive.
the bills that's getting put through right now is they're wanting to get it to where the government will hold the utility companies accountable to get things done in a more timely manner, which means in less than a year. So we wouldn't have to wait a year, or 2 years, or keep getting held off for 5 or 10 years. They would actually be held to get it done sooner.
We need to find out how many charging stations they just put in out at the prisons too, because I hear there's a lot, which could have been power our community could be using.
I think some of that is because the Cal vans, the employees that use the Cal vans, they're switching over a bunch of them to electric vans. So
Yeah,
that way you have a way to charge while they're there. That's I think.
It's people's cars. You can charge your car out there too. There's a lot of them. Maybe something our congressman can look into.
And if I could
Put you on the
add,
spot while you're here.
if I could add one thing from my discussions in PG&E during a lot of these issues, we're finding that some of the local PG&E reps here and permitting guys and engineers are finding that these projects are not being approved at a local level here. Not in terms of like city, but locally with PG&E. A lot of these large charging stations are being approved potentially down south, and they're finding out about them, and it's absorbing a lot of capacity out here. So that's one thing, you know, it might be beneficial to start talking to representatives and find out where the source of some of these projects are being approved, because we're finding that all of a sudden these things pop up and not even the folks here locally know about it. And so, because I try to have communication with these folks here locally because of the issues, but it'd be interesting to know like who's making the decisions on some of these projects where it's taking away from our ability to be able to grow, right? And so we can definitely, I think we should look into it as well. I mean, I think we can and find out where that's coming from.
Any more questions, council? Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Sorry, I just want to confirm on the record, there's 22 items because we have the one from the special agenda added.
I move to approve the entire consent calendar.
I'll second. Roll call, please.
Councilman Vosberg,
Aye.
Mayor Horn,
Aye.
Councilman Hedgecock,
Aye.
Councilman Schindler,
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 6.1, discussion and direction and potential action regarding selecting a voting delegate and up to 2 alternate voting delegates for the annual business meeting at the League of California Cities 2024 conference in Long Beach.
Thank you. This item's fairly simple and quick. This is on here every year. We need a voting delegate and up to 2 alternates for the annual league conference. So far, I believe the council members that are registered to attend are the mayor pro tem, and Councilman Bosberg. So if you'd like to nominate a voting delegate and an alternate.
I'd like to nominate myself as a voting delegate.
I think it's been common past practice that the mayor and mayor pro tem are both the main delegates, and then whoever else is attending could be the final delegate. If all else fails.
I'd like to nominate Councilman Vosberg and Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez as the alternates. Since those are so far we're the only 3 going.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Just to clarify, it's in that order.
Yes.
Mayor Horn,
Aye.
Councilman Hedgecock,
Aye.
Councilman Schindler,
Aye.
Councilman Bosberg.
I also vote aye.
Okay, now we'll move on to item number 2, adopt resolution number 4218 and Coalinga Public Financing Authority resolution number PFA 24-02, approving proceedings to finance improvements to the city municipal water system, approving the issuance of revenue bonds by the Coalinga Public Financing Authority for such purposes and approving related documents and official actions.
Thank you. If it's okay with the mayor, I'm going to kind of do an intro here, and then I'll have the team come up as I'll present up at the podium. But back in June, city staff and its financing team, based on council's direction, has prepared the requisite documents needed for the city to finance a portion of the 2024 water project, and such documents are all attached in the report. One thing that I want to identify is that the 2 items, one's for water and one's for wastewater, so the actions have to be taken separately. Each resolution, the 2 resolutions can be acted upon at the same time, one for water and then the 2 for wastewater. However, the presentation will cover both water and wastewater, so we'll basically cover all the information on the 2 items, and then we'll just have the council take action on each separate enterprise. And so in June, the council authorized this staff to execute the energy services agreement contract with Johnson Controls to install photovoltaic solar panels at the wastewater plant and also at the water plant. And as part of that approval, the council approved staff to execute the contract with Johnson Controls, which has been executed, and authorized the contribution of the $500,000 from the water enterprise as well as from the sewer enterprise, which to be reimbursed by the incentive tax credit when that comes in. And so it's going to be kind of listed actually as a kind of a reserve account to be able to hold those funds until that payment needs to be made, and then the city will get basically reimbursed through that ITC credit. And then authorize the execution of the initial notice to proceed with Johnson Controls, which we've been working through right now, and then consideration of using bond financing to pay for the portion of those 2024 water projects and wastewater projects subsequent to or subject to those financing documents. And so tonight is the action to proceed with that issuance and proceed with the with basically the financing of the portion of this project. And so there's a lot more detail in tonight's presentation related to the financing component rather than the project component. And so based on the project contract that was approved, the financing component will be presented to the council. And so with that, I think, oh, there's Rob right there. So I'll have Rob from Wolf Hansen come and do the presentation, and it'll cover both the water and the wastewater issuances. And if there's any questions afterwards, we'll be more than happy to answer them. We have the full team here tonight with any questions you guys may have.
All right. Thank you, Sean. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Rob Pankratz with Wolf Hansen and Company. We are the municipal advisor to the City of Coalinga, and my colleague who's here with us on Zoom today has been working with the city for over a decade, and we are happy to present tonight our request for final approval to issue water revenue bonds and wastewater revenue bonds to fund the JCI solar project. There we go. I'm going to cover the background of the project quickly because Sean has covered that already, and I understand you guys are already very familiar with this. So quickly, in 2017, via an RFQ process, the city selected Johnson Controls to design and build a solar project for the purpose of offsetting future PG&E cost increases. Since that time, on and off, extensive work has been done to carefully evaluate the economic benefits of the project and to really structure a project and a financing that meets all of the city's needs and long-term goals. Last month in June, the council approved the JCI contract. So today we are coming back to ask the council for final approval to issue the bonds to fund the project. Here we have a summary of the project that's been gone over in depth a number of times. So unless there's any questions at this point, I'm going to move on to the financing. So the financing will pay for a portion of the project. The total cost of the project is approximately $10.7 million between the water portion and the wastewater portion. This will be funded via a $500,000 contribution from the water enterprise, a $500,000 contribution from the wastewater enterprise, and then from bond proceeds in the amount of the balance, which is $1 million less than the total cost of the project. One of the reasons why $1 million of the project costs are being funded from existing funds and not from financing is because of the water and sewer enterprise's limited debt capacity based on the current revenues without future rate increases, which was an important component to structuring this project. We received feedback from the council that they wanted this project to be completely self-sufficient so that there were no need for future rate increases to pay debt service on this project. And as I get a little further along in the presentation, we will show you what the projected debt service coverage ratios are for both funds after this project. On this slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about our financing structure. So this project will be financed via two separate bond issuances, water revenue bonds and sewer revenue bonds. The purpose for having two separate issuances is so that a portion of the project can benefit from the wastewater enterprise's comparatively stronger financial position. We are seeking an investment grade rating on both of the bond issues. Currently, the city's sewer enterprise has an investment grade rating. It is the stronger of the two enterprises. And currently, the water enterprise has an S&P BB plus rating, which is one notch below an investment grade rating. So we are having a rating call with Moody's Ratings in 2 weeks, and they will give an updated new rating for both series of bonds, and we are hopeful that we can achieve an investment grade rating on the water bonds and maintain the investment grade rating for the sewer bonds. If we are able to obtain investment grade ratings, the financing team believes that it's very likely that both issues will qualify for bond insurance and a surety reserve bond. These will make the transaction significantly more efficient because a surety bond will allow the bonds to be issued without a cash-funded reserve. Currently, it's structured that the bonds will fund a cash-funded reserve between the two series of approximately $1.1 million. That gets eliminated if we are able to obtain a surety bond. In terms of bond insurance, if we are able to qualify for bond insurance, that means that the bonds will be sold at the bond insurer's rating, which is a AA rating, which is one of the highest ratings on the scale. Currently, the water enterprise is a BB plus, and the sewer enterprise is a BBB minus. So if we qualify for insurance and can market the bonds as AA rated, there will be significantly more savings in this project, and we are very hopeful for that. So tonight what we are presenting is the financing on a worst case basis for your approval. We are all working diligently and have high hopes that we will perform much better in terms of achieving the rating that we want. qualifying for bond insurance and qualifying for a surety reserve. I do have one caveat when I say that we are showing this on a worst case basis. We're showing it on a worst case basis in terms of outcomes with the insurers and the rating agencies. There is always the chance that interest rates increase by the time that we price the bonds, in which case there is a possibility that the figures that we're showing tonight would be better than what actually materializes. But we do not believe that rates will increase from now, between now and when we price the bonds. We think it's actually more likely to decrease. So at this point, I want to quickly introduce Michael Garcia, who is here with Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer is the underwriter for these two bond issuances. They have been working with the city for a number of years. They were the city's underwriter for its 2021 bond issuance, and they also were the placement agent for the city's fire truck lease financings that took place a few years ago. Michael, do you want to say a couple words on the current state of the market and sort of what your expectations and Oppenheimer's expectations are for the trend in interest rates?
Yeah, I'd love to. Good evening, City Council. Thank you for having me. As Rob introduced, my name is Michael Garcia, associate with Oppenheimer and Company. And just to speak a little bit to the market, trends are really heading in a good direction to your benefit, especially over the past month or so. Early on in the year, we saw rates rise quite a bit, but since then they've been coming down. Over the past month, we've seen Treasury rates actually drop about 50 basis points, which is about half of 1%. Right now, the Fed is expected to reduce interest rates in September by about a quarter basis points, and increasingly, some investors are believing the Fed may lower interest rates again before the end of the year. Now, a lot of that's already built into the market. The expectations of rate cuts are built into the yields that the bonds are currently being offered at in the market. It's really when the expectations change that you see the big changes in the interest rates. But I would agree with Rob, looking forward to the next couple months, unless there's a big change in terms of inflation or the economic growth or lack of growth. Things are trending in the right direction.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the proposed bond issuances. So based on the worst case assumptions that we outlined on the prior slide, the water project is expected to produce sufficient electricity through fiscal year 2050 to save the water enterprise an estimated $9.22 million. And this is net of all debt service, city contributions, and associated ongoing expenses. Furthermore, completing the water project will allow the city to qualify for a direct pay subsidy from the federal government known as the ITC, or Investment Tax Credit, that was created under the Inflation Reduction Act. This tax credit on the water enterprise is expected to be received in the estimated amount of $2.8 million. And we anticipate that will be received in approximately fiscal year 2027. On a similar basis, the wastewater project is expected to produce enough electricity to save the wastewater enterprise $1.37 million, net of all debt service costs and city contributions. And furthermore, the ITC for the wastewater project is expected to be received in the amount of just over $1 million. In total, net of all expenses, debt service, and city contributions, the combination of these two projects is expected to save $14.5 million over the course of 25 years. On this slide, we show the sources and uses of funds for the financing. In the blue column, we show the water revenue bonds, and in the green column, we show the wastewater revenue bonds. So the total sources of funds represents the amount of money that the city will borrow. Between the two issues, it is just under $11.7 million. In the below section, uses of funds, we show how those funds have been allocated. $9.77 million have been allocated towards the project fund. That's exactly $1 million short of the total project costs. there is a reserve fund in the amount of just over $1 million. That is a reserve that will make the bond payments if the city is unable to make its payments on the bonds. And if those funds are never used, they're applied to the last bond payment, and the last bond payment is made from the reserve fund, instead of being made from city accounts. If we are able to get a surety bond, as I discussed earlier, we do not have to fund a reserve fund, which means that we can either lower the bond issuance by approximately $1 million, or we can fund the entirety of the project with bond proceeds, and the city will not have to contribute $500,000 from each of the two enterprise funds. Below that, we show the capitalized interest fund. That is the fund that will make the first interest payment for both the water and sewer bonds. And that interest payment happens before the project's complete and is able to save money. This is one of the features that was added to the bond structuring so that the debt service did not fall on the backs of the ratepayers, and that debt service payments didn't have to be made until the savings from the project materialized. The last two items, the cost of issuance and the underwriter's discount, are the professional costs associated with issuing the bonds, and there is a built-in contingency to the cost of issuance in case there's any unexpected fees or services that are needed in association with issuing the financing. If that contingency is not needed, it is used to pay debt service. On this slide, we show the amortization for the water revenue bonds. As you can see, there's no principal payments until fiscal year 2034. We're just making interest payments until then. That is a function of the debt service coverage. You can see in the first year that capitalized interest payment is applied so that you have zero net debt service in the first year. And then similarly, you can see in the last year that the reserve fund is used to make a portion of the final payment. On this slide, we show how we calculate the savings, the projected savings for the water revenue bonds. Going from left to right, we have the fiscal year, the amount of energy that's produced from the project, and then we show the total savings that is a product of the energy generation. We show the total non-debt service expenses associated with the project. We show the net debt payments. And then we are adjusting in the first year, which we call year zero, the installation year, for the city's contribution. So we're starting out in a little bit of a hole from a cash flow savings if the city contributes funds. Then in the green, that represents the investment tax credit subsidy. That's the subsidy that we anticipate receiving in 2027 from the ITC. And then on the far right hand, you can see the annual cash flows. After the first year, the project generates positive cash flow every year except for fiscal year 2029. And that is the year in which the deferred O&M to JCI becomes due. They agreed to defer the first 5 years of those expenses to help the bond structure be more efficient.
And just to confirm, we're going to utilize the ITC money to make that payment. So essentially, operations, our actual operations will not have to cover that cost.
That's correct. So the water enterprise is projected to save a total cash flow of just over $12 million from this project. And the net present value of that cash flow is $5.09 million, meaning in today's dollars, that is the value of this savings. On this slide, we show the projected debt service coverage for the water enterprise after the 2024 bonds have been issued. This table was made by Dan Bergman, and this is a really powerful table to show that even if we project revenues to not increase over time, as you can see in all of the projected years, it either decreases or becomes flat. And as you can see, the expenses increase every year. The city can still afford these debt service payments and have healthy debt service coverage ratios without having to raise rates on ratepayers. On this slide, we show the wastewater revenue bond amortization. These bonds start paying principal a little bit earlier in fiscal year 2031. It has similar effects with the capitalized interest making the first payment and the reserve fund making the last payment. On this slide, we show a similar savings analysis for the wastewater revenue bonds. The wastewater revenue bonds are projected to produce cash flow savings of $2.45 million. The net present value of that cash flow is $953,000. And then here we show the projected debt service coverage for the wastewater enterprise. So similar to the water enterprise, we show that revenues hold steady, expenses increase slightly year over year, and we're adding in the 2024 bond debt service. Even after adding in the debt service, we have healthy debt service coverage ratios that will not require rate increases to support making the debt service payments. So our recommendation tonight is for the City Council to adopt the two resolutions, one for the water enterprise and one for the wastewater enterprise, and for the Coalinga Public Financing Authority to adopt its two respective resolutions. This will allow us to go forward with issuing the bonds. This is the final approval by the City Council that we're requesting. If we receive your approval tonight, we will go to market in approximately 3 weeks to issue and sell bonds, and then ultimately close. On my last slide, there we go. On the last slide, I show our remaining steps in the issuance process. On August 14th, we are scheduled to have our rating call with Moody's for both the water bonds and the wastewater bonds. Approximately 1 week later, we will receive the rating on those bonds. Once the ratings are received, we can finalize bond insurance and receive formal quotes from the two bond insurance companies. The following week, the preliminary official statement, which is the disclosure document and the main document used for marketing the bonds, will be become available and will be mailed to prospective investors. We will then price the bonds on either September 12th or September 17th. This is going to depend on the rating that we ultimately get. If we achieve an investment grade rating, we'll price the bonds earlier. If we do not receive an investment grade rating, we will delay the pricing by about a week, which will give Oppenheimer more time to market the bonds to the appropriate investors. And then we will close either towards the end of September or on October 1st. Do we have anyone on the financing team from Zoom who'd like to make any comments before I open it up for questions? Hearing none, I'll open it up for questions.
Council?
So, obviously, the selling of these bonds and marketing is going to be strategic, and it could, from what I understand of looking at the Fed's information right now, you know, they're setting to lower rates like you stated. Now, does that take into, do you guys take that into consideration when you're marketing our bonds? And then also, if they're setting to drop again, is that taken into consideration?
It absolutely is. We take the economic calendar into consideration when we're scheduling bond sales. We've come to the conclusion that it's advantageous to price these bonds going into a Fed meeting where they are expected to drop rates. If they drop rates, or I shouldn't say if they drop rates, before they drop rates, the market will price in that the rates have dropped on the longer term bonds. If they ultimately do not drop rates at the Fed meeting, which would be a shock to many people, rates would jump up after the Fed meeting. So we want to price before the Fed meeting.
And then, like, what effect does it have on our bonds and what we could pay or what we could have paid if they decide to lower the rate again? Because that's, from what I'm reading and from what you guys said, they're probably going to continue down this trend and try and stimulate economic growth.
Right.
So what effect does that have on us? It seems like if they're going to drop it, that I mean I know it's a gamble, just like everything, right? So, but you know, if they're going to do it again, and when would they drop it again? December?
That's what's expected. We're expecting a drop in September and in December.
So does that help with selling of the bonds, and does that benefit the city in that range, or does it really benefit the people that are buying the bonds?
It benefits the city. When interest rates are expected to, when the short-term interest rates are expected to be lowered, that has an effect on the longer-term interest rates that are set by the market. And those are the interest rates that are going to affect your bond more so than the short-term interest rates set by the Fed. But when the Fed changes interest rates, that affects the longer-term interest rates as well. So theoretically, yes, interest rates could and most likely will be lower in December, but we don't know that for a fact. And this project has timing considerations where we can't delay the sale for too long because we need PG&E or we need JCI to complete the project in a quick enough time horizon so that we can still be grandfathered into the net energy metering 2.0. And that's going to have more of an effect on the total economics of the project than any difference we would have in interest rates in December based on current market expectations.
Okay, and then how sure are we that the ITC money is going to come in, and what effect does it have if it doesn't?
So I can't speak to that. I'm not an expert on receiving the ITC. Right now, what we know is how the guidance has been worded, and I have not seen any indication that folks will not be receiving their ITC direct pay subsidies. There is an election in November, and it's impossible to predict if the outcome of that election will affect this specific line item within the Inflation Reduction Act. I have not been given any reason to believe that it would be has been taken away, but I'm also not an expert on that matter.
So I guess what I'm asking is, what's the impact if we don't receive that?
So the impact on the water side is you'll lose out on a cash flow of approximately $2.8 million. And on the water side, you'll lose out on a cash flow of approximately $1 million. We're projecting total savings of $14.5 million. So if you deduct approximately $4 million from that, that'll reduce your savings to $10 million, and it will also significantly backload the savings that you'll receive.
But we built the model, the savings. We do not rely on the ITC money does not come in. This project still pencils out. So if you look at the full number, the 14 million minus the 3 or 4, you still got 10. But it doesn't affect the annual cash flows either, nor the debt coverage ratios. So we made sure that when we built the savings model with JCI, it did not rely on the ITC money at all. Because there's always a chance, but we've gone round and round about the ITC money, and based on the project and how it pencils out, I guess you'd say it's the risk you're willing to take because it still makes sense even without the ITC money. It's still an added bonus to it.
Okay, and then can you kind of explain? There's some language in here that talks about that. The city is going to be giving the water system to the authority, and then the authority is going to be effectively, I think what's the word is that is selling it back to us. So can you kind of explain that just for anybody that may not understand that?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So the way that municipal-owned utilities issue revenue bonds in California is through a JPA, or a financing authority. There are multiple types of financing authorities. Some financing authorities are created in-house, where the city council is the governing body of the financing authority and maintains control of everything a financing authority does. There are other financing authorities that have separate governing bodies. And both of these authorities can issue revenue bonds. Municipalities directly cannot issue enterprise revenue revenue bonds. So the way this works is that the city has what's called the Coalinga Public Financing Authority, and it's a joint powers authority between the city and the school district. But the governing body for the financing authority is the city council. So what we do so that the financing authority can issue revenue bonds is we have the city sell the treatment plant to the financing authority. And then the financing authority instantaneously sells the plant back to the city in exchange for installment payments. And the installment payments equal what the debt service is. And then the public financing authority receives the installment payments from the city and then makes the payments to the bondholders. But before that even happens, the public financing authority assigns its rights to receive the payments from the city to the trustee. So the payments, no money ever actually flows through the public financing authority. It's really just a mechanism to allow municipal-owned utilities to issue revenue bonds in California. And that's the way it's been done since before I entered the business. The city utilized this structure in 2021, in 2012, and more likely than not before that.
Okay, and then just one more question. Dan, what do you think of this? I value your opinion. I really do. I know I've put you through the ringer in the past for a lot, but I really do value your opinion.
Yeah, first, Rob did an outstanding job, which is to be appreciated for sure. From previous presentations here and discussions with you, the one thing that was clear was that this project needed to cover all of its costs, including the debt service coverage. So it had no impact on rates. I thought we were dead at that point. But again, thanks to Wolf Hansen, they didn't give up, and we went back to JCI, and they compromised. So the one thing I want to bring up is that Rob talked about the worst-case scenario. So in the worst-case scenario, which is what he just presented, it's covering its own cost and the coverage costs, so no impact on rates. So with everybody else, I am so optimistic that it's going to get better. With a better credit rating, not having to have the reserve amount, which would just make it that much better. And the other thing that we checked that was in the staff report, the analysis that I did, and Sean mentioned it, is we stress tested this thing. And as Sean pointed out, if the ITC money doesn't come in, it's still good. And if the ITC money comes in and electric rates don't increase at the 5% per year, and the panels start to fail toward the end, that's okay too. It's still good. But what can happen is they can't both go wrong. So, that's reasonable. We stress tested the thing. So now, the finance work is going to be done, the contract signed. We just need the team to do the best job possible to get that, to demonstrate that the system is creditworthy. Because it is. This place is well managed. And it's frustrating that S&P didn't recognize that, but we have a second chance.
Perfect.
And thank you for asking me, because I wanted to say that.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay, so that, I believe that covered both items, so what would council like to do with the water first, the water resolution? Anybody want to make a motion to approve it?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second it. And this would be for item 6.2 for the water. Roll call, please.
Councilman Hedgecock,
Aye.
Mayor Horn,
Aye.
Councilman Schindler,
Aye.
Councilman Vosberg.
Aye.
Okay, and the next item for approval is item 6.3, and that would be the wastewater.
I'll motion to approve or adopt a resolution number 4218 for the wastewater.
I'll second that. Can we get roll call?
Councilman Schindler,
Aye.
Mayor Horn,
Aye.
Councilman Hedgecock,
Aye.
Councilman Vosberg.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, announcements, city manager's announcements.
Thank you. So Tuesday of next week, which is August 6th, from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., we have National Night Out going on downtown. We have 550 sets of school supplies this year for Coalinga students entering grades TK through 12. We also have the dunk tank that'll be open at the police department booth. And we have Murphy, our fire dog, will be out there to meet the community. We have music that's going on by Doc's Music over at the library. Mayor Horn donates his time playing music and sort of emceeing the event. We have a police versus fire relay that will begin at 6 p.m. And then I talked police and fire into doing a Bean Boozled challenge at 7 p.m. So there will be lots of fun stuff going on downtown.
Council have any announcements? All right, my only announcement is our first responders, I believe both of our chiefs are going to be in the dunk tank. So now's your chance to come out. The Chief Garza has actually stepped up this year because we don't have Simons, our normal every time. And he usually gets in there 2 or 3 times. So, but I told the chief if he did it this year, I would do it myself as well. So. Okay, are there any future agenda items? No. Okay, none at this time?
Actually, I did have one.
So did Roger.
Oh, okay. No, you go first. No, you.
I think I forgot it.
Do you want me to tell you what they were?
No.
It was the explanation one.
Yeah, it was an explanation for the Measure J bond or measure. Yeah.
Got it.
And then mine was, it's kind of a question, and if it needs to be an agenda item, it can be, but do we have the proper amount of funding set aside for the education for Measure J? And I remember I'd asked you, and you said you were going to check on that. Have they gotten back to you yet, or no?
No. So what he's referring to is we had a contractor do polling in 2018. And in 2018, it was a $10,000 charge. So I'm going to reach out to them and see what that cost would be. If it's under $10,000, then it's under my spending authority, so I can do that. And if it's above that, then I'll need to bring it to the council on August 18th if you want to approve the contract.
Okay, and then I guess it was just a question.
Okay, and right now I have none. So we'll move on to closed session. We have one item tonight. That being said, meeting is adjourned until August 15th.